out of John's hand, somebody he knew, to then eating out of somebody else's hand, somebody that he didn't know. But slowly, yeah, just go with the grain of the hair.
Yes.
Yeah, just like that.
So they don't get like too much blood in their head?
No, so that's the crazy thing about sloths is that their circulatory system is extremely adaptable. So us, if we did a handstand or put ourselves into some awkward position like that, all the blood would rush to our head. Or if I held my hand up like this for a real long time, my hand's going to fall asleep because all the blood's going to rush down from it. But sloth circulatory systems are extremely adaptable, where whatever position that they put themselves into, some valves will slam closed, others will pump harder to ensure that all throughout their body is getting adequate blood flow and not allowing it to pull to one side or the other. So they're very impressive animals, and while that's the most common position for a sloth to be in is all four claws hooked onto the branch, you can see he can turn himself upside down and be eating like that. Or once a week they actually will go down to the base of the tree to use the bathroom, and they'll be sitting upright like this. Yes, once a week is how often they go to the bathroom. Yes, yep, just once a week. Not every 7 to 10 days, so it's only about 3 or 4 times a month that they'll go to the bathroom. However, when they do go, it is a massive event for a sloth because they'll expel about 1/3 of their entire body weight, so about 30%. That would be the equivalent of a 200-pound person having a 60-pound bathroom break. So we would probably need to do plumbing after that.
Wow.
But, and it's not all solids, it is liquid as well, and so they will only pee once a week too. So some people think I have kind of an easy job because I don't have to clean up poop every day, but then when they do decide to go, usually it's on the most inconvenient day of the week for whatever reason. If I have a busy morning, the next morning, they'll decide to go to the bathroom that night. Then I've got to scurry around the morning and get everything cleaned up and aired out because it sits in there for a whole week. It's pretty cute.
Hungry again?
Yeah, I think.
I don't think you want to see
He has so much snot on
There
his
it
nose.
goes.
What?
So does he like
hungry?
He has never been held.
Oh, okay.
Flash will never be held
Okay.
unless he's the one to climb onto us.
Okay.
Because like I said, our other 3 sloths are ambassador
Ah,
sloths
gotcha.
where they genuinely enjoy that interaction. And they've had that conditioning starting at a week old, but Flash never had that. So the first 3 years of his life, he was basically in solitary confinement and never had anybody interacting with him.
You might not can see it, cute.
You hungry?
Just
Again?
gotta keep in mind that all of our movements and everything too have to be really nice and slow because while sloths have really poor eyesight, they have a condition called rod monochromacy, which means that they only see motion really well. So he's not going to be able to reach it where you're holding him right now. You hold it down to his nose. That would be like somebody holding a piece of food like this to you. You got to give it to him to his mouth, and so I know it's kind of hard to peek up there and get him up high, but sometimes you almost have to touch his mouth with it so that he can get a hold of it. There we go.
Good job.
There we go, yeah. Yeah. And those teeth are self-sharpening systems, so every time they close their mouth, they rub up against each other. You can hear a little grinding noise to where they sharpen each other every time. But what I was saying about their eyesight is that condition, that rod monochromacy, means that they're completely colorblind. They only have rod cells in their eyes and no cone cells, and the cone cells are what allows us to see color. However, the rod cells pick up motion, so they see motion a lot better than we do. And so a simple movement.
Real sluggy. Real scared.
Yeah, there you go. And then you can just let go of it.
How do I get a video?
And so a movement just like this, for us, for them is going to be a lot more height and a lot quicker. And so that's why all of our movements have to be really nice and slow when we're going up to it.
You're getting kind of heavy.
Good job, Mikey.
Yeah, because Emer's a big giraffe.
Good job. Likes all those.
Yeah, I want more food.
Is this generally breakfast time for him?
Yes, and so he established his own routine with this. You know, the first 2 years that we had him, it took him a long time for him to even start to come down to floor level when somebody was in there. But then after it got to the point where he was starting to come down and interact with us and eat out of bowls and out of people's hands, then it just became routine for him that in the morning when John would get here around 9 o'clock, he'd go ahead and open up that door go in, talk to him a little bit, and then he'd turn around and start to come down after he heard John's voice. So he'd come in here, start chopping up everybody's breakfast,
There you go.
and pretty quickly Flash figured out that if I hook onto that door frame and start to reach out and act really cute, then they come over and give me my food a lot quicker. And so then when he started doing that consistently every day, hooking onto the door frame and reaching out just like this, then we were like, well, let's just build a branch out here, and if he wants to hook onto that branch and hang out with us in here in the kitchen, then he can do that. So that's what we did, and that's what he did. He just hooked onto that branch and would come out just like that.
You want it? You know when you're eating. It's just the side.
I do not like sweet potatoes.
Alright,
And take
doesn't want that one.
Now hungry kids.
It may be just a little bit easier instead of having to pick her up every time and having that real big movement. You're this little chair right here.
Just go real soft.
And then you can just
Real
step
soft.
up onto there and get up to him.
If you want. Just real soft. Real
This
soft.
one just happened. He didn't.
What do you think, bud? Makes sense to you, guys?
It looks so very good.
Come on, Flash.
It's too far away.
Maybe he'll come back. He go. Here
Here
he
he comes.
comes. Good job.
And so I had mentioned earlier that sloths will digest their food in a very unique way, and they'll actually use a bacterial process to digest their food instead of an enzymatic process like we use. And we're born with those enzymes, but the sloths are not born with the bacteria that they require to digest their food. And so they have to get it from somewhere. And that first little bit of bacteria will actually come from their mothers. So around day 3 is when the baby starts to be interested in eating solid food. So they'll climb up onto the chest of the mother and start to lick the mom in the corners of her mouth while she's eating. And they'll kind of, the baby will eat some of the leaves out of her mouth while she's eating that. And they'll kind of swap spit back and forth. And the bacteria that mom has in her gut is also in her saliva. And so some of that bacteria from mom will then be transplanted over into the baby. And then after that, in the wild, the mothers and the sloths, all the sloths will have a whole bunch of moths living all throughout their fur.
Oh gosh.
And they have a symbiotic relationship with those moths. And those moths will produce that bacteria that the sloths need to digest their food in their waste product. So then what will happen is the moths that are on the mom will transfer over onto the baby. And then as the baby starts to turn around and lick themselves and groom themselves, they'll lick up more of that bacteria to always keep that bacteria in their gut.
Real soft, Mikey, real soft.
But in captivity, they don't need those moths. The little bit of bacteria that he got from his mother 7 years ago is still in his gut, and he will always keep that bacteria in his gut to digest his food as long as he's kept warm. But if we let him get cold, his body temperature would drop, and bacteria does not like cold environments, and so that bacteria could be completely wiped out. And that would be not good for the animal. They'd have no way to digest their food then. But in the rainforest, as we know, temperatures are always fluctuating, and while it's hot and humid for the most part, overnight, depending on the season that it is, it can drop as low as 60 degrees. And that's not good for that bacteria. And so if that bacteria is wiped out, the wild sloths need those moths on their back so that they can lick up more of that bacteria. And so adult sloths in the wild, the bacteria they have in their gut that's helping them digest their food, that bacteria that they have then is not their mother's bacteria. They only keep that bacteria for a very short amount of time. The first time that the temperature drops outside, the mom's bacteria that they've got in their gut is wiped out. And so then they always have a renewal of that bacteria every day, basically.
Yeah. We're almost out of orange
It's
stuff.
gonna be full.
We have like 3 more pieces
Yeah.
of carrots, and then all the rest of it is like zucchini.
He wasn't even finished with that bite, and he took another one.
Let him finish picking paper and chokers. That's amazing,
Almost out of
And for us, if I tried to do a handstand and eat food, it would not work out very well for me. But for the sloths, it works out well because they only have a one-way valve that allows food to go in, but not back out. So once it's in for about 30 days. That's about how long it takes for one bite of food to be digested through the system. Just watch your fingers when you're putting little bites like that in. Some of those littler pieces are just for some of the smaller sloths, so you
Give me a
would,
second,
yeah.
Pete. Give me a second.
Henry, don't use
Yeah,
that.
those little pieces are too small for him,
These are bigger pieces.
yeah.
You want this one on the
See
end?
if he'll want it. Because we're out of carrots. Just got to be, I'm guessing that's carrots. For sure. That's what it looks like. Let me try again.
And sometimes if you break those bigger pieces in half and then offer him the side that you've just broken, sometimes he smells it a little bit better.
No, I don't think he wants it.
But while their eyesight is extremely poor, their sense of smell is actually really good. And even if they can't really see something, most of the time they can still smell it.
I can't smell this.
I can't smell the difference between zucchini and squash, but he can. You know, the squash, that yellow kind, it smells just like zucchini to me, but for sloths, they always can pick out which one it is. There'll be some days where he only wants squash and no zucchini, or vice versa.
No. Okay. So I like it. I don't think he really wants the zucchini that much. Well, he's started to dig it again, so.
Hold it up higher, baby. Closer to his mouth.
Don't tap him, he's scared.
No, I don't think he wants it.
Where you going,
Bye.
bud?
Will he ever get on the ground? Or is it-
So, yeah, the only time that they ever go down to the floor is to go to the bathroom or if they're needing to travel. So in the wild, sloths can travel up to a mile in a day, you know, even if they're just doing the same lap in the same tree. But they can move quite a bit, more than researchers used to think. But really the only time that they'll go down to the floor and crawl is if they're hearing their mate, you know, screech. What happens is the female, when they go into heat, will let out a really loud screech sound over and over again. And that alerts all of the males in the area that she's ready to be bred. And so they'll all slowly make their way to her. And it's like the slowest race of all time, but the first one to get there is the lucky winner, and he will get to breed the female.
What's that thing that screeches at nighttime here? Is that the peacock? That thing that makes all the sound?
That's probably the macaws down there on the end, yeah.
We heard him last night.
Yeah.
What is that? What's he doing now, taking a nap?
Yeah, he takes some little micro naps like that just to kind of decompress in the middle of his encounters. And then he'll go back over.
Probably didn't.
He takes a lot of little breaks. We haven't offered him any green beans yet today, and he absolutely loves green beans. But if he knows that green beans are on the menu, then he won't eat anything else. And so I usually try to wait until the very end to get these, because otherwise he won't want anything. How long are you guys in for?
Through Saturday.
Okay. You got any other encounters scheduled?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing the baby sloths next.
Oh yeah, that's right, yeah.
Mhm. They hold the baby ones, right?
Yes, yep. Hey, Flash. Come on, bud.
Green
Tires. And a hard day. Kiki, I'm recording so you don't have to record, okay? I'm recording.
I know, but I want some pictures.
I'm gonna give them to you. You can have all of
I also
mine.
got pictures of him closer.
Yeah.
You take videos of everything.
Mm-hmm. You'll learn when you're older. We used to have a big videotape when we were kids. You just have no idea. Are you talking to me?
So every time I have a corn Tom from like 3 years ago, just have to get it in the
So what he'll do to eat this is at the angle that he's at, he can't really eat out of this bowl. So what he'll do is lower down all the way just by where he's hanging by his two back feet. Then it makes for some really cool pictures for when they lower it down like that. Is that all part of them go? What do you think? Come on, look.
First animal we're gonna see today is gonna be a very bouncy, pouncy animal. But everyone, including parents, use the hand sanitizer. If you touch the cat and then you touch a kangaroo, the kangaroo can die.
So if you want to hold this bowl, you can step right here and hold this bowl, and you can get approximately this close. And you can take pictures of things like that.
Hey, listen. You can walk around.
And so you can see when he's in that position how long his front arms are compared to his back legs. They're about twice as long as the back legs, and just as long, if not longer, than the rest of his body. And so, believe it or not, sloths are actually excellent swimmers, and that's about their fastest form of transportation is by water. So the way that they digest their food is similar to a ruminant animal or a cow. And so the first compartment of their stomach is the biggest compartment, and that helps to ferment a lot of the leaves that they're eating. And so in that fermenting process, it creates a lot of gas in their system. So that makes their back end basically just float when they get into water. And then one swipe with their front arm, just propels them forward pretty quickly because those claws stay together. Doesn't allow for water to go through.
You're a good door guarder.
So I mentioned earlier that when they go to the bathroom, it only happens once a week, about every 7 to 10 days, and when they do go, they go all the way to the floor to go to the bathroom, and in the wild, they do the same thing. And so when they're down there on the floor, that's when they're most exposed to other animals that could potentially try to eat a sloth. But it's for a very important reason that they go all the way to the floor like that to go to the bathroom. And if they didn't, sloths would not exist anymore. They would have gone extinct a long time ago, and we wouldn't have any more around. And so what happens when they go down there to use the bathroom, we talked about how important those moths are to them. Do you remember why the moths were important to them? Go ahead. Yes, the bacteria. They'll digest their food using that bacteria produced by the moths. And so when they don't go down to use the bathroom, they'll hold on to the base of the tree and start to wiggle their little booties back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to go to the bathroom. And that signifies all of those moths that are living on their backs to crawl off of the sloth, lay their eggs in the dung pile of the sloth, and then crawl back up before they lose their ride back to the canopy of the rainforest. And just about the only fast thing that a sloth does is go to the bathroom, because that's when they're most exposed to everything. So they want to get it done pretty quickly. And then a week later, when the sloth gets the urge to go to the bathroom again, doesn't matter if they're in a few trees over or wherever they're at, they will always go back to that same exact tree every single time, because at the base of that tree is last week's dung pile, and the weeks before and the weeks before that. And in that dung pile are last week's eggs that were laid by those moths that are now this week's larvae, and this week's larvae will be next week's adult moths that will crawl back up onto them. So every time the sloth goes down there, more eggs are laid and more moths crawl back up onto them to always keep that population stable on their back. Because not only are they eating the bacteria produced by the moths, but they're also eating a portion of the moths themselves for their protein source. So they've always got to make sure that they've got enough on them. And that's why a lot of times people and even different resources will say that sloths are dangerous because the bacteria that they have on their backs is dangerous to humans. And that is false information. They just say that because they don't want people to touch wild sloths. And a lot of people that see our live streams and see that we're handling a sloth like this are like, oh my gosh, I thought you weren't supposed to touch sloths. That's dangerous or that's harmful to them. And in the rainforest, it definitely is harmful to them. He just doesn't want you to take it down from him. He's all the way stretched out as far as he can, so he can't go down any lower. And in the rainforest, if someone were to touch a wild sloth that had never interacted with people before, one, it would be dangerous because the sloth would be trying to eat you. They are very solitary animals, but if they're messed with, they would definitely be using those teeth to try to get you away, yes. But two, it'd be very dangerous for the sloth as well, because they have an entire ecosystem that is living on their backs, full of those moths, but also moss and algae that's growing on their backs. That's a food source for those moths. And so if you touched a wild sloth, it would completely mess up that entire ecosystem enough to where those moths would say, this is not a hospitable place for me to live anymore, I'm leaving. And if all of the moths left that sloth would have no way to be able to digest their food, and they would pass from starvation in approximately 2.5 weeks, even with a full belly of food, just not able to digest any of that food with no bacteria. And so that's the reason why a lot of people will say that it's dangerous to touch sloths. He's almost got it cleaned out. He's just licking it clean now. They're a lot softer in captivity than a lot of people think that they would be, because he's only about 13 pounds. He looks a lot bigger than that because of all that hair, and muscle weighs more than fat, and they don't have either, really. It's really just skin and bones, and that's how the way that they're made. The way that they move and contract their limbs are mostly just using tendons and ligaments. Muscle is not really too much of a factor with how they move.
What was that? Then he's the same.
Yeah, you
as
can
our
try and
cat.
see if he'll want any of these green beans now.
You wanna try? Green mean, grab like 3.
You just let that look here. There you go. And you can move that chair over too, just a little bit closer to him. And since their eyesight's so poor, like I said, their sense of smell is really good, but their sense of hearing is also really good. And so sudden noises that they can't really see. Even I've noticed recently that tearing a paper towel down off of a paper towel roll is enough to scare him to the point where he'll fluff up real big and try to look a lot bigger to make sure that if there is something that's, coming to get him, maybe they don't want to come get him because he looks a lot bigger than he actually is.
Yeah.
And I did that the other day. What he does in the morning is he hooks onto the door frame and then reaches out and grabs onto that branch. We've never held Flash, and so he transfers himself out onto this branch, and you'll get to see here in just a little bit when we finish up. I'll open up that door and he'll go right back up himself as well. So how he comes down is basically just the reverse of that. But he had just hooked onto the door frame, and I tore a paper towel down off of the roll and didn't know that was going to be something that startled him, but it did. He jumped real hard and he fluffed up real big and stood there just still, just straight still, did not move whatsoever for like a whole minute before he realized and slowly started to depuff. And was like, okay, I think it's safe, and slowly came back out.
Is he like other sloths?
So they're very solitary animals by nature, and so they're not going to be seeking out interaction like that with anything else, and even sloths. So no, he hasn't ever been around any of the other sloths. It is a potential in the future to try to see if they'll be acclimated together, because a lot of other facilities will house their sloths together. They just have to have enough space away from each other to where they'll all kind of pick their own areas that they'll stick to, and they'll kind of pick their own resting places. And his enclosure goes up 20 feet, so he has enough room in there to put an additional sloth in. Just not sure what the plans are going to be in the future, because we do have 4 sloths now. They definitely could if they got into a scuffle like that, and you can see those teeth. So it's going to be, if we ever do decide to acclimate another sloth in with him, it'll be an extremely slow process, and it'll start out with, there'll be a barrier between the two where they can see each other and maybe stick an arm through and just see how those interactions go. Then if they go well, take that barrier away to where they can actually have direct contact. But everything with the sloth is slow, not just with them, but everything that you're trying to train them to do too. And you can hear that little grinding noise that he's making. That's his teeth rubbing together. So what time is your guys' next encounter? Is it 12?
You got the key, dear.
Oh yeah, yeah, well,
Okay. Sugar steak cake.
You got rice all over your nose, buddy. And they hate to have their mouths cleaned off. They're a lot like toddlers. can see in his eyes, he's got tiny little pinpoint pupils in the daytime, but at night, they'll actually dilate quite a bit. And their vision kind of works like night goggle vision, and you know, looking through that goggle in the middle of the day, you really can't make much out. So that's not how it is. You need to make like a little ASMR video with him and a little microphone right there next to him while he's jumping, because it's the cutest thing ever when a sloth is doing it, but then as soon as a person does it, I'm like, close your mouth. Something different about how a sloth does. He loves his green beans.
Well, you're the only one I know that like beans.
And even Kevin, the guy that was in here just earlier, if the sloths don't want green beans in the morning, then he just eats it raw. And I'm like, I don't like, no, I would not eat a raw green bean.
Can he lick? Is his tongue that long?
They definitely can. They can't lick. They can't curl it upwards. It's almost like they're tongue tied. They can stick their tongue straight out, but can't really curve it upwards like that.
We're doing a farm thing this afternoon, I guess.
Yep. Yep. Sugar gliders, micro squirrels, hedgehogs, armadillos, watermundis, kangaroos, camels.
Do you mostly do the sloth?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's your thing.
Yep. I'm a full-time sloth keeper, so it's
How did you get
definitely
into
a
that?
full-time job for this. Well, my end goal is to become a veterinarian.
Cool.
And so this is just kind of a stop
Yeah,
in
it's a great
on the
thing.
way
Yeah.
to my goal.
Okay.
So I have a bachelor's degree in animal science, which is what I had before I started working here.
Yeah.
And I've known about this place for like the past 3 years because I was riding with a large animal vet that did all the vet work down here. So that's kind of how I
Oh,
knew
but
about
they're
the
always,
place.
always something.
Yeah. This is definitely his most popular place.
That's great. You don't want a little friend. That's strange though, right? Not many animals only want to be alone.
Yeah. It's very unusual. You know, for a lot of other groups of animals, there'll be a name, like a herd or a flock or a gander or a band, depending on the animal that it is, but there's no name like that for a group of sloths because they don't exist naturally. Sometimes when they're in captivity, they can be housed all together like that, depending on what the facility setup is, but there's still no name that scientists have come up with for that.
There you go, feed me anymore later.
We started just a few minutes early before 10, and so our time is right at about finished. But I'll go ahead and open up this door for him to go back into his enclosure. It's really cool to see how he goes up, because it's a lot quicker than a lot of people think that it will be.
They can move fast.
Yes, they definitely can. They can have short bursts of energy if they're trying to make it somewhere. So you guys are welcome to step in there into his enclosure, and the pictures and videos turn out a lot better if you're actually inside. So you get the views from straight on. Straight to his neck.
It's like Buzz Lightyear falling with style. So these guys, they like to eat honey and nectar. They like to eat flowers and fruit.
guys will be with here in a little bit. That's Dash. He's just soaking up some sun.
Y'all do like live streams and stuff like that?
I think that we're on one. I don't know if we still are or not. Yep. We're on, I think this is Facebook. Facebook or YouTube one.
There's a wasp. There's a wasp in here.
Yeah, there's a wasp behind you.
Oh,
It's on the door now.
these wasps.
Is it on the outside?
No, I think it's inside.
There's squirrel in their hair.
Is it really?
No,
it's
no, it's
Oh.
It's on the window now.
Oh, I hope you didn't get the little sloth.
Well, he's gonna be pretty boring the rest of the time because he said he's in his bed and
Will he lay in that bed?
They'll stay in there for the majority of the rest of the day because in the daytime, you know, they're not as active. And at night, that's when they'll choose to move around a lot more.
The nocturnal?
Yeah. That's when they can see a lot better. Remember, their vision's kind of like night goggle vision. And so the daytime, they really can't see much.
Where does that belong to? The baby.
Oh, so Dash was actually, he wasn't born here. He came from the same facility that Zoe and Chloe came from, and those are our other two ambassador sloths. And the guy that we get them from has been doing it for over 35 years, and he's actually a veterinarian as well. And so we'll stay back just a little bit from him though, honey, because sometimes he tries to climb up on people. So very unlike Flash, Dash does genuinely enjoy human interaction. He will seek it out.
How old is he?
He just turned a year old. And so if you stood close enough to him, he would climb up your leg and up onto your chest to be up on you. And so it's not his encounter time just yet, but then we'll do him, I think at 12 is when you gotta come back from him.
Okay.
But until then, he's gonna soak up some sun in there.
Does he like that basket?
Yes.
What, can he
cre-
climb?
He can, but he won't. So that's not his enclosure, that's Flash's enclosure. But he stays in there, you know, just to soak up sun and stuff in the morning like that. But if he had the option between sitting on someone or being in his enclosure or in his basket, he would rather be on someone than be by himself. And so people and that basket are his two most favorite places to be. And we set that entire basket into his enclosure that's up at the main house. And he will stay in that basket pretty much all day long. And then at nighttime, when his food goes up into the dish up in the top corner of his enclosure, he'll climb up there and eat it and then climb around and he'll hang and do different things. But for the most part in the daytime, he just stays in the same spot. But, alright, you guys get your phones? I think one of those phones is mine, but I think the other one is Chris's. Oh, no, that's mine. It's a radio.
Oh, it looks like
It's
two.
alright, yeah.
Okay.
If you guys don't forget to sanitize your hands for me again right here real quick. And then whenever it's time for your